Hi everyone, my name is Andy Castillo and I'm here at IWCE 2023 in Las Vegas, Nevada. And a major theme here is just the rapid advancement of telecommunication technology, from smart streetlights to traffic sensors and satellite connectivity, and also smart pavement, which maybe isn't the first on your list. But here to tell us a little bit more about that is Tim Sylvester. And Tim, can you just tell us a little bit about your company and what you do?
Absolutely, Andy. Thank you for having me here, by the way. So I'm the founder of Integrated Roadways, and Integrated Roadways provides digital infrastructure products to help transform roadways into networks. The idea is the same way that computers benefit from the internet and smartphones require cellular service, connected electric and autonomous vehicles need services that come from the roadway.
And one of the big issues is, that we've all seen is vehicle charging. Like, nobody wants to sit at the side of the road for 45 minutes an hour. And we've talked a little bit before, and you were mentioning how at 65 miles per hour, a vehicle could be charging. So tell us a little bit about that technology, how it could be integrated into roadways.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're really excited about wireless, dynamic wireless power transfer. That is in-motion charging of electric vehicles. Wireless charging for passenger vehicles is a luxury, right? It's a convenience, it's great to have, and it provides you essentially infinite range without ever plugging in. But for commercial fleets, wireless charging is an absolute necessity because they cannot stop every few hundred miles and charge. So you have to build those charge systems into the road. We've seen with some of the electric vehicle makers that when they're towing a vehicle, their range is dramatically shortened. Well, you can add batteries, which makes it heavier, which then makes it harder to haul a heavy load, or you can stop and charge frequently, which is an issue, or you can just get the charge from the roadway as you're driving and never have to worry about it.
And does this technology exist today?
Yeah, there's multiple versions of the tech that exist. Multiple versions are being deployed in public roadways currently. Several installations have happened in Europe. Europe is usually ahead of the United States when it comes to advanced infrastructure. We actually did a demo for Cisco and Ford this time last year that was actually featured at this venue for Cisco Live last year, showing off wireless charging. The versions that are in the market right now are essentially equivalent to level 1 trickle chargers, but level 2 and level 3 versions are rapidly coming to market as well.
And just to kind of clarify, you don't actually create the technology of the sensors and the charging, but you create the conduits, the roadways. So how does that work? Like, is this something that you have to tear up, miles and miles and miles of road and then reinstall it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so this is our main product, Smart Pavement, is a direct replacement for existing roadways or for new construction and new roadways. And a lot of times people get intimidated by the whole rip and replace requirement. But I like to remind everybody that 50% of America's roads need replaced right now. And we simply do not have a means to do that using traditional methods of financing, traditional sources of capital, and traditional materials. Construction is a huge contributor to atmospheric pollution, and we just can't keep doing things the same way that we have. We need a new generation, and in my view, the next generation is the digital transformation of infrastructure and making it financially self-supporting and economically and environmentally sustainable by adopting all the advances that we've created over the last 100 years.
One thing that here at American City and County we've written a lot about is just rethinking sort of archaic ways of doing things, like from budgeting to revenue to roadways. And you and I have talked a little bit about this in the past. Historically, we've always looked at roadways as being maintained and sort of fundamentally funded by taxpayers, which leads to all sorts of complaints at town meetings about too many potholes. So how could this sort of technology perhaps reframe how we think about how we pay for streets and roads?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I think is long overdue for asking. Roads have been publicly subsidized for the last 100 years to promote the adoption of automobiles, and we've had enormous economic development from that. But now we have 100 years of unfunded liabilities that we don't have any way to fix. So we recognize that the commercial services for advanced mobility, data collection, edge networking, fiber, wireless communications, wireless charging, navigation for autonomy, the list goes on. These are all commercially demanded, and they have existing, for most of them, existing demand in the market where people want to pay for it.
Yeah.
Well, if all of these services have commercial demand, I've yet to have anybody give me a good explanation why the public should pay for it, and then what are they going to monetize it? I mean, public agencies do not run commercial services. So if we recognize that all of these advanced mobility needs have all of this commercial demand that can generate revenue, and we leverage that through organizations like myself, like mine, and our business partners, we can actually finance the delivery of new roads for essentially free to the public, and then charge the commercial consumers for the benefits that they receive, which revolutionizes road building, and it transforms traffic from being a cost into a source of revenue. Now, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to pay a toll just to drive to the grocery store. And that is not what I'm describing. We are not talking about tollways. We're talking about things like commercial consumers of data, wireless services, fiber services. So an individual driver might purchase something like wireless charging,
Right.
Or navigation for autonomy, but the vast majority of these service deliveries are going to be invisible to drivers, and they'll occur through the commercial economy that surrounds those roadways.
From talking to sort of businesses that create this technology, is there a desire for something like this to happen? I think before we were talking about how a major telecommunication company that you were talking to didn't really have a place to put their products inside of cities. So is this something that is wanted from your experience?
Yeah, so one of the issues that a lot of large organizations and institutions, whether they're commercial or governmental, have is the stovepiping of responsibilities, right? You segment everything out and you say, this is this person's job, this is that person's job. And as a consequence, utilities in the public right-of-way are each individually managed. And so you constantly have an issue where you rebuild a roadway and then, a fiber company comes in and trenches it to put down a new line, right? And that is an immediate damage to the brand new road. You have other issues where telecom can't get access to the public right-of-way, and the public agency can't get funding for the road improvements. So our concept is, why don't we bundle all of the demand for utilities in the public right-of-way into a single delivery, operation, and revenue package, and that way all of the commercial services can subsidize the delivery of the public service side of things, and because all of these are assembled in a build once approach, you can accommodate all the needs that everybody has in a coordinated fashion, and you're eliminating the vast majority of the labor costs for implementation, the planning expenses. So if everybody's delivering their product individually, the road, the fiber, the wireless, the edge, it's 100% of the cost for each of those silos. But if you combine them into a unified delivery, you actually drop that cost by as much as 90% for each of the individual deliveries. So it's really just a question of coordination among institutions, organizations, and agencies that have previously acted very independently, but we're no longer at a place where that kind of independent action makes economic sense.
Yeah, definitely. The public and private spheres are becoming closer together as technology pushes them together. And speaking of public organizations, have you kind of brought this toward, to cities and counties and asked them if this is something that they might be interested in?
Yeah, very much so. And there's a lot of old guard that are still in positions of authority that have never sent an email or received a text message, and they just don't really understand the demand. But I always ask them, if they don't get it, please talk to your children and ask them if they get it, right? So yes, there's a cohort that struggles, but what I find is that most people are very open and accommodating. They understand that they need a new approach. Just as several of or many of our organizational leaders have never interacted with technology in the same extent that somebody of our generation may have, these rules were written by people that died several generations ago. It's not that they've never sent an email, it's that they never even lived at a time where email existed. And I know it sounds kind of flippant, but frankly, I'm tired of being bullied by dead people. They're never going to be here again, but we will have descendants, and we need to think about their needs and accommodate them. So going back to your question, on the municipal side, we see a lot of eagerness for this kind of new approach. And what we do is essentially the same thing that worked for cable networks and cellular networks in previous decades. We go to the agency and we establish a concession, which is really a form of public-private partnership, like a managed lane or a tollway, but again, no tolls. And that gives us the opportunity, with the approval from the public agency, to go to the private side, the commercial demand, for all the telecom and other utilities, the builders, the engineers, the financiers, and organize a consortium to do the design, build, finance, operation, and maintenance of public infrastructure. Now, that has existed for interstates for the last 40 years. But interstates are only about, 200,000 lane miles out of 5 million miles of paved roads? It's a 0.3%, tollways are 0.3% of American roadways, okay? But surface streets, Main Street, Broadway, Market Street, right? You can't toll those. It's not possible, which means that under the current methods, there's no way to accept private financing. But if we just wrap in all of this commercial demand into a single build once delivery, and then use the revenues from the commercial services to repay the investment in the core infrastructure, suddenly it's not only cheaper for everybody, it's easier to deliver, it provides more value, and it solves the biggest financial problem that public agencies have, which is, where in the world are they going to get the money to replace half of their roadways?
I personally will be watching this pretty closely. I think the whole restructuring just of how we think of government, of how we think of funding opportunities is an interesting topic. It's a very necessary topic. And thank you for taking the time to talk about it with me.
I appreciate your time too, Andy. Thank you for having me.